You remind me of the Babe. So, another completely self-indulgent bit of video with me talking about something that I love and don't have any other particular impetus to talk about it. So, I'm just gonna ramble for a while, and this time it's Labyrinth. I think that I mentioned when I talked about Dark Crystal a little while back that Labyrinth is my preferred Jim Henson Creature Shop fantasy product. And there's a number of reasons for that. I'm personally of the opinion that it's a little more polished overall than Dark Crystal was. But, you know, I think also it's a matter of personal taste. It appeals to me in its style of fantasy a little bit more than what Dark Crystal was doing. Dark Crystal, as amazing as that world was a very standard kind of fantasy setup and quest narrative. Whereas Labyrinth, while Sarah, our lead, has a very clear quest and goal in mind, the fantasy world leans a bit more towards Alice in Wonderland rather than Lord of the Rings. And I like that. I enjoy what I tend to think of as fairy tale logic, which is things that work a certain way because that's just how they work. You know, magic doesn't follow any logic, and sometimes there are things that happen and solutions to situations that just make no logical sense, but that's just how this world works, and I tend to really enjoy that, and this does that a bit more. But okay, well, boy, where do we even start with this? You know what? I think I'll start by addressing what are some of the criticisms that I know that exist about this movie. One of them is about Sarah, played by Jennifer Connelly. There are complaints that she is whiny, that she's not particularly well acted, that she's bland. I grew up on this movie. I've been watching this movie since I was, I don't know, 6-7 years old. So, like, I've got serious nostalgia blinders on this. I don't think she gives an outright bad performance. I may be nostalgia blind to that. I'll admit that. I do, however, think that she has a character arc. She comes in whiny, bratty, self-obsessed, you know, only interested in how things impact her and not anybody else. And then she makes a horrible mistake, and she's got to fix it. And that is valid to me. And I mean, especially considering the age she is, when things go wrong, and they go wrong for her a lot, her crying out, "That's not fair," I'm like, yeah. That's kind of it. I mean, that said, I don't want to oversell her. She's not some brilliant protagonist, but I mean, I'll certainly take her with an understandable goal and someone who understands the situation that she's in over somebody like, say, to make the comparison again, Jen from Dark Crystal, who doesn't seem to have a clue what's going on and no capabilities besides. But, you know, Sarah is clever. She's not stupid. Like the whole thing with her marking the ground with her lipstick so she knows which way she's gone. That's a really good idea. Doesn't matter because the labyrinth's gonna completely screw with you, but it was a good idea. It was a good notion. And she does figure out a logical answer to the riddle of the, one person always tells the truth, one person always lies thing. Didn't matter because, again, Labyrinth, it doesn't really care that you technically did it right. But she's not unintelligent. She is clever. And I think there's a whole host of great characters in this. If you're comparing her to the other cast of characters, yeah, she is the blandest one, but she kind of has to be. She's bland in the same way Alice in Wonderland is bland. She is there to lead us through this insanity, not to be part of the insanity herself. But as far as other characters go, there's Hoggle. Hoggle's a character I love. I have a really soft spot for cowardly characters that it doesn't feel like the narrative overly judges them for being cowards. I think you really do get a fair sense of Harley. Like, he wants to be a good guy, but he is terrified of Jareth and what could happen to him. It scares him to absolute death, and that comes across really well. And the puppetry in that face is dang good. It's dang elaborate. It is an impressive piece of work, and I just think he's a really good character besides. And like I said, I do enjoy these sort of people who are cowards but kind of wish they weren't. And he falls into that. And he's got so much self-hatred, being fully aware of his own flaws. And I think that rings true in a lot of ways for someone who has an awareness of what their biggest faults are, but can't seem to bring themselves to change them. So I like him a lot. Ludo is just kind of lovable. He's got almost kind of a bulldog face, this sort of permanent and he's just sweet. He's just sweet and nice and fluffy. And he's friends with rocks. Who's friends with rocks and can summon them? Ludo can, and he can do it here because it's Labyrinth, and we don't care if you can't figure out how somebody makes friends with rocks. He did. That's how it works around here. Sir Didymus, I recently got to introduce my kid to this one. Sir Didymus was her favorite, and I knew it would be. All enthusiasm. It's just this little fur ball of pure, unbridled, raw enthusiasm. Charge! And his steed, who's like, this is a horrible idea. Ambrosius, who just doesn't want to be there. And the two of them, I mean, first of all, just the image of what basically looks like a dog riding another dog. That's just kind of awesome. And again, there's something really enjoyable and kind of admirable about his blind faith in his own abilities to just fight his way out of any situation. And his cockiness in that is, I mean, you see him, Ludo is gotta be like 20 times his size, and Sir Didymus's reaction to thinking that he's his enemy is to go, I can conquer this mountain! Tally-ho! I love that. I llove that guy. The Goblins are great. There's so much terrific, especially if you pay attention to the background, Goblins. This is something that I've come to appreciate more now, because when I grew up on this on VHS, it was pan and scan. And this is a wide screen, this movie, and the crop was basically, sometimes it was just half the screen, and I was missing the other half that would have all these other goblins in the background doing all this crazy stuff and great slapstick, and they feel so alive, which, you know, it's Jim Henson. The puppets, when being handled by Henson puppeteers, always have this sense of life to them, and the Goblins have that in spades. They're just funny. They're funny and they're weird and they're not particularly creepy. Coming back to something else that I think people tend to complain about, the Fire Gang, which is a weird non sequitur and an odd song. It doesn't really move the story forward. But again, in my mind, it fits because this is Alice in Wonderland if Alice in Wonderland actually had a plot. Because Alice in Wonderland doesn't really. She just kind of meanders from thing to thing to thing. And depending, it's been a long time since I've read the original book. I don't remember it being a strong thrust of the book, but depending on different adaptations, sometimes there's more emphasis on her trying to get home, or sometimes they try and bolt a quest narrative onto it, and it doesn't take. But this feels like it's dipping its toe into that kind of nonsense, which I love. I love fantastical nonsense, but it also has her like having a mission. But if you're thinking of it closer to Alice in Wonderland than Lord of the Rings or Dark Crystal, then in my mind, this kind of divergence of this crazy group that take off their own limbs and their heads for fun, I guess, is acceptable because it fits in this world. Plus the song's fun. So I think if you can dial into the headspace, I don't think there's anything wrong with that scene. And there's just so much stuff all over the place. The walls telling them to beware, and Hogwarts like, just stop. We're not going to listen to you. One of them was like, oh, please, I haven't said it for such a long time. There's so much personality and everything. Actually, there's a specific moment that really made me be amazed at the level of thought and articulation put into these puppets and these performances. And this was something I realized I was probably 20-something rewatching it when this really struck me. I've been watching it forever. I knew it was there, but it's with the doorknobs, the knockers rather, which is another great scene. So much personality. And you've got the one with the rings through his ears, the one who can't really hear very well, and he has this one line. After the other characters in it say something, no good, can't hear you. And that sniff, he does that, and like the face moves appropriately, it contracts, like it does a sharp intake. And it's a puppet. It's a puppet with no life except what a performer gives it. And they take that extra moment to give him this dismissive inhale. Like, much like with when you're watching animation, anything that you see done in animation, there's no such thing as the little thing that an actor just does naturally that makes it feel more real. It has to be thought of and put in there on purpose. And it's very much the same with puppets. If a puppet is not been articulated in a way to do a certain movement, it just can't do it. If they didn't think that it would ever do that, it won't do that. If the puppeteer doesn't think to give it that little extra motion on something, it won't do it. All this has to be done consciously by the people making it. And that to me is such a level of artistry and thought and just inhabiting this art form. It's amazing. But I know what you're waiting for, and I've danced around it enough. Let's talk about David Bowie and Jareth. For so long, this was, it probably still is, my definitive image of David Bowie. Probably always will be. And I think it is for a lot of people around my age. And there is no word to describe David Bowie in this role and Jareth as a character besides just cool. It's a bizarre 80s poofed up hair kind of cool, but damn it, it's cool. He's effortless and he's swaggering and he's oddly intimidating at times and yet strangely enticing. And I have a suspicion that he caused a maturation awakening in many a viewer and possibly a sense of confusion for many folks. Probably, I would say definitely more than any other character in a PG movie. I would say arguably more than any other character put to film. Maybe second to Tim Curry as Frankenfurter in Rocky Horror. But it's right up there. Like, I don't care who you are. You look at that and you're just like, I will never look away from this guy. And yes, the bulge. Yeah, I'm not even gonna dwell on that because as a kid I didn't really notice, and as an adult I kind of shrug it off. It's him. He is magnetic. Whether your eyes are magically drawn to his face or his crotch, whatever, he's magnetic regardless. But the thing is, it's not just a matter of stunt casting a great fit of performer to character. That is here. But I actually do think Jareth is a fascinating character if you really pay attention to what's going on with him. Because there's a certain sense of obligation to him. There's a certain sense of weariness. There's a certain sense of almost desire to rebel. There's a line that he has towards the end that I've always latched onto in my mind as being the definitive Jareth line, and it shapes what I think of this character. Which is, he says that he's been generous. And Sarah says, what have you done that's generous? He says, everything. Everything that you've wanted, I have done. You asked the child be taken, I took him. You cowered before me, I was frightening. I have reordered time. I've turned the world upside down, and I've done it all for you. I am exhausted from living up to your expectations of me. That line, especially that end, I am exhausted from living up to your expectations of me. That line fascinates me. This is somebody who, in a way, is playing a part. He knows what his role in this story is, and he's playing it, and possibly even taking enjoyment out of it at points, but ultimately, he's doing this because it's what he's supposed to do. And there's part of him that's exhausted by that. And given my attraction to this kind of fantasy where we don't overly explain everything, I'm fine with not knowing exactly how all this works. But if you want to go headcanon places, you've got any number of ways to go. Maybe he just simply has a meta awareness that this is a story for this girl and his role is to be the villain and he's going to play that role. Maybe he's actually going a little extra for Sarah because there does seem to be a bit of a push-pull, possibly attraction. I'm not sure I necessarily want to go there, like, because it implies a sexual thing, but there's a longing in him, like, especially with a song like Within You, which is the song that he sings during the whole MC Escher scene, which, awesome, weird, trippy scene. And, just this sense of he is somehow intrigued by Sarah, and yet at the same time is frustrated that he even has to do this. There's a terrific push-pull going on internally with this character that I'm not even sure I fully understand, and I'm pretty sure I can't properly articulate, but I love it. And the thing is, I tried to read there was some sequel or possibly prequel stuff done, like there was a manga or something. I tried flipping through it, but it started to delve more into Jareth. I'm like, I don't want to know. Like, I want more of him. I want to see more of him, but I don't want him explained. I love the contradictory nature of the things that he says and the things that he does. And I just find that intriguing. I don't want to know the ins and outs of that. I think the level we get in this film is perfect. I actually think a fair amount of credit needs to go to Terry Jones for the script, because I don't know if he gets as much sort of recognition as he deserves for his contribution to this film. And I have a feeling he was the one who brought that kind of Alice in Wonderland, let's keep things not tethered down to logic kind of sensibility to it, because it is a little bit Monty Python-esque in that way. It's like this feels like it makes sense in the moment. Does it make logical sense? Absolutely not, but who cares? So I want to give acknowledgement to him for that, because again, I don't think he gets enough of it. The music, there's the songs, obviously David Bowie did those, but even the score, which is Trevor Jones, who also did the music for Dark Crystal, the music it's very 80s, it's kind of synthesizer heavy, but I enjoy it too. I think it adds to this, and it plays the right things at the right moments. This movie is for me such a complete package in terms of amazing puppetry, terrific designs, courtesy of Brian Froud, who also did the conceptual designs for Dark Crystal. Jim Henson really at the top of his game, a great script, a kind of fantasy that I love but can't get a lot of. There is, especially on film, there really is the push within fantasy to, especially these days, to have the more grounded, it has to make sense thing. That's, your Lord of the Rings, your Game of Thrones. And those are good, and I enjoy those. But I have a real soft spot for, don't cross toadstool rings because it's bad luck, and not because of any logical reason, because that's fairy tale logic. I love this. I love Legend. I love Pan's Labyrinth, and because there aren't many places I can go that give me that kind of feel, that this is just how this story works feel, because I enjoy that. I like when a story asks that of me and has the faith in me as a viewer, has a faith in my level of the willful suspension of disbelief to just allow me to go with it, because I will. Maybe not everybody does, but I do, and I love it, and I love this movie. And I think that'll wrap up this one. Labyrinth, why it's awesome to me. Have you seen it? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's stuff to do, like and subscribe and support me on Patreon and all that stuff. Links for everything are down in the description, plus links at the tail end during the credits. Until next time, this council is adjourned.